Oh, you need to push live. Hi, everybody. We're getting Instagram hooked up. Johnna, which Instagram page are you on?
My personal, the
Personal.
Johnna Devereaux CPN. Yeah, I'm gonna
Johnna Devereaux CPN.
trying to get you on there right now.
Gwen's trying to type upside down.
Perfect. Sent.
Oh, it's.
I see her hair.
There she is. Invite. All right, invite coming your way. Oh yeah, there's Gwen's hair.
Yep.
There we go. Yay.
Yay.
All right, but we've got echo. Make sure it sounds off. Yeah, mine for some reason turns itself back on when you go live. I don't know why. Okay, now we're good. No echoes. All right, welcome everybody. I think we have 3 platforms going. You can tilt up a little. I think we have 3 platforms going if we're lucky here. And today we're going to be talking to our kitty cat folks. So, and my guest today is Johnna Devereaux, who's the Chief Nutrition Officer and VP of Marketing at Bow Wow Labs. You may remember her from when we did Pet Choking Awareness Day back in June. I think it was June 22nd. We worked on that together. And Johnna happens to have a really interesting story that we thought would be amazing to share. She has a little kitty cat named Henry, and he has a common disease, and she came up with a protocol, and I don't even know what the protocol is yet, so this is exciting. She came up with a protocol to support him and treat him and hopefully help him survive and get over the hump. So, Johnna, first of all, tell us about Henry, how you got him, how did he land in your lap? He's a lucky guy, by the way.
Yeah. And thank you for having me. Henry was a 7-week-old barn cat that needed a home. And of course, I'm a sucker for anything furry cute and needs to be rescued. So we had just lost my boy Diego about a year before, and my little girl Lola needed a friend. So I'm like, let's bring home a little kitten and have that cross-species relationship. And Henry came, and he was really happy and healthy. And about at 9 months of age, it was actually the day after Christmas, I had noticed that something wasn't right. And so in hindsight, he had started degrading a little bit each day, probably like a week or 2 beforehand. But I remember driving home and I checked his gums, and his gums were really, really pale. And I had that moment of, oh no. Day after Christmas, I rushed him to the emergency room. And they basically did a slew of blood work, and he came back with a 7 hematocrit, which basically meant he was extremely anemic.
Yeah, anything under 15. So normal is 35 to 45. Anything under 15 is you need a transfusion yesterday.
Yeah.
So we're at 7.
He was a 7. So they immediately gave him a blood transfusion, and unfortunately his body rejected it. He spiked 106 fever. So they barely got any of the blood in him, but they got enough to bring his hematocrit at least up to an 11. And they put him on the steroids, obviously, to bring that temperature down. That was on a Monday. On Tuesday, they gave him the phone call, which is, we don't know what's going on with him. We're doing more testing. And then, of course, they came back saying he tested leukemia positive, which for me as a pet parent, I was like, wait a second, he just tested negative like a month and a half ago before he got neutered. How is that even possible? And of course, with kittens, that can happen, right? Especially after a neuter, something that kind of changes the cells, right? And so he had tested positive for leukemia. They kept him there for another day and then called me and said, he maybe has 2 weeks to live. And for any other kitten, we would be recommending that we put him down. But your cat doesn't care that he's sick. He is a fighter and he doesn't care, but he doesn't like being here. So we'd like you to bring him home and just let him, be at peace for the last 2 weeks. And at that point, Dr. Judy, I, as a pet parent who had just lost, my baby to cancer, was like, I'm not going through this again. And I dug in and dug down and went through my nutrition and my herbal and my mushroom experience and found what I was hopeful would be an answer.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So Henry was doing fine for the first 9 months, or so we
Mhm.
thought, and got neutered. How long after the neuter did all this show up?
2 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
So potentially, if the virus was there and
Mhm.
everything was going well, then the stress of being neutered, it could take a couple of months. His hematocrit, it may have activated it pretty quickly, but
Right.
then may have taken that long for him to feel sick enough for you to really notice that, oh, geez, we got a problem here.
And that's the thing, for him to show that he was sick enough. This was a kitten that, even with a 7 hematocrit, was still moving around. Like, the vets were like, I don't understand how he's even standing. He should just be flat out not moving. And he was not only moving around, he was eating, he was defecating and
Thank
urinating. Like,
God.
it was just because I checked his gums. I just had that intuition that something was off.
You
And
know,
boy, was it.
And it really is interesting because when we have anemic animals, so anemia can come from one of three things. Either your bone marrow's not making red blood cells, which in leukemia case, that's what's going on. The bone marrow's not making them, or the body is killing them off in something like an autoimmune disease where the body decides to attack the red blood cells, or you have a bleed. A tumor breaks, so you cut an artery, you have a rapid loss of blood. And when you have a rapid loss of blood, the body doesn't have time to adjust. When you have a slow loss, like with the leukemia, where the bone marrow just, slowly is kind of not producing, because the red blood cells will last a couple of months in the bloodstream, but they are constantly turning over. So, when they're starting to die off and you're not making new ones, you kind of get this slow decline. And it's amazing, particularly in cats and kittens, how you can have these animals that have this incredibly low hematocrit, but because it's sort of come on slowly, the body learns to adjust. Like, it learns how to conserve the little bit of oxygen it's getting. It learns how to conserve the little bit of iron and hemoglobin that's traveling around. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing that I did is, while I was doing my research, was I immediately got him onto spirulina. So spirulina increased the hemoglobin content. So that was one of the first things I did. Spirulina also contains phycocyanin, which has actually been shown in research to induce apoptosis in leukemia and cancer cells. So I was very much targeting anything that would create the apoptosis, which is the natural death of cells for your viewers. Directed towards leukemia and cancer cells. So that was the first thing I started. And I have to tell you, I always say in the herbal world with, my nutrition clients, that when you have a dog that needs something, they are lapping it up and they want it. When you have a dog that starts turning away from an herb, that's an indication that either they don't need it any longer, it's not working for them, we have to go in a different direction. Henry loves spirulina. Loves it.
Smart kitty.
Well,
That's
loves
a
it.
zoopharmacognosy going on.
Yes,
Like, I
yes,
know what I need and
absolutely.
I'm grabbing it.
Absolutely. So we started out with the spirulina, and then I started going down the road of mushrooms. I knew we wanted the beta glucans. I knew his body couldn't digest them. I knew that, if it went into the dectin ones, the dendritic cells could bring it into the bone marrow, right? Talking about the anemia and how it could potentially change the epigenetics. So I started going down that road, and I determined I wanted reishi, maitake, and cordyceps because of their polysaccharide content. And because they also induced apoptosis. So I created a blend in a glycerite form, because no cat that I've ever met in my entire life would eat powdered mushrooms, right? You can get away with that stuff with dogs, but cats are the most finicky thing in the world. So I ended up getting a glycerite form, so that I could just squirt it in his mouth. And then I started thinking about what else can I do to support the lymphocytes. And I started thinking about the thymus gland. And so I went down the road of looking into thymus supplements and landed on thymic protein A. And so our protocol has been those 5 supplements. And his body rebounded within 2 weeks. His hematocrit started moving upward. When I saw you at Global Pet Expo back in March of 2023, he had just tested negative for leukemia, which was amazing. And I was so excited when I told you. But I made a critical mistake, right, as a pet parent. The critical mistake I made was that I was so overjoyed that he tested negative that I stopped the protocol. And what ended up happening was that when I got back, I thought he was stressed because I had been away, and he had some loose stool. So I got it to get tested, and it turned out that he had a low level, like parasites. So again, knowing cats don't necessarily take to natural deworming methods that I would otherwise use with dogs, I begrudgingly gave him the dewormer, and his body crashed within 24 hours. He went back he stopped eating. For 4 days, I was basically syringe feeding him, and then we got his blood drawn, and his hematocrit has dropped again.
Do you know which dewormer it was and what parasite he had?
If you said it, I would remember it, but that's like one of those memories that I want to pluck out of my head because I'm blaming myself for it. It's a fairly common the dewormer that you have to do twice.
It's probably did he have roundworms?
Yes.
It was probably just parental.
Yes, it was.
And parental is frankly considered one of the safest dewormers.
Well, and maybe if he had been healthy. Right. So what the mistake I made, and this is how we learn and don't ever make mistakes again, is with leukemia being a retrovirus, it went undetectable on the blood test, but it was still in his body. And that's the crucial mistake that I made. So I thought I was going to lose him again. That was early May. And he's still here. He's still here. And his blood work, I obviously put him immediately back on our protocol. And his blood work came back today because I just got it tested yesterday. Absolutely perfect. I'm not chancing letting too much time go by. So we are doing frequent check-ins on his blood.
Well, sure. So now you said that he absolutely loves the spirulina, and the mushrooms, you're doing those as a tincture?
As a glycerite, yeah, in glycerin.
And are you still giving those? And does he still want them? Does he still like the spirulina?
He does. I actually make a little blend with the thymic protein A in water and sprinkle the only way he'll take it is if spirulina is on top. So that's his daily round of the thymic protein. And the mushrooms, this sounds so silly, but he gets his breakfast and then he's like a typical cat. So he'll eat half of it and then he wants to come back 10 minutes later for the rest of it. And then about an hour later, I give him his mushrooms, and it's almost like he knows. He comes into the kitchen and just waits. And I've never seen a cat so willing to take supplements, but he does. And he's a trooper, and he's doing phenomenal for it. And this may not be something that works for all cats that have leukemia, right? But I wanted to share this, and I really appreciate that you wanted to share this as well, because you never know what's going to work for an individual animal. And it might work for 1 out of 100 of your viewers, but at least it can help one, because it certainly helped Henry and all the veterinarians, because there's a lot that I've been kind of conversing with about this are really amazed at how well he is doing for how sick he was.
Well, again, they kind of know what they need. And if the worst thing you have to do in life is sprinkle spirulina on your cat's food and he actually likes it and is attracted to it, could be a lot worse. I mean, spirulina has a lot of functions. It actually is a great Jing tonic, which, I mean, this leukemia is one of those things that affects kittens the hardest. It's a Jing tonic. The immune system is not working very well at this point. And the same with the mushrooms they just do so many incredibly good things. So do you think that you will leave him on these supplements for life, or
Yes.
okay. Cause I was going to say, if you get 6 months or a year in, are you going to go, okay, looks good?
No, well, and I'll tell you why, for exactly the point you just made. Spirulina is beneficial for a variety of ways, right? It helps the brain. Like there's so many benefits. It helps to boost the immune system, antioxidant, fight off infections. And the mushrooms, I mean, I'm one of those people, having been through so many master classes now on mushrooms, that I think every single person that is living on this planet, every dog, every cat should be on some form of therapeutic mushrooms, and you should be on them for life. The idea being, you don't go to the gym for 4 weeks out of the year and expect for that to cover you the rest of the year. You have to continue doing it. I know, I wish, right? I would totally subscribe to that. what I might do, is if he, because there's now the new test for the leukemia virus. They test the levels. So if he tests consistently negative over a period of a year, I might consider reducing the amount of thymic protein A, but I have the financial ability to buy all of these supplements. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason for me to take him off of them ever. Just maybe reduce the quantity of what I'm giving him.
Yeah, the thymus addition is interesting. I don't know if you know Dr. PJ Broadfoot, but she's a holistic veterinarian down South Arkansas, I
Mm.
believe. And she is a huge fan of using thymus supplements for so many things. And it has incredible properties, but it's hard to find. It's hard to find supplements. There actually is one veterinary line product of deer antler velvet that also has thymus in it that Dr. PJ Broadfoot helped with the formulation of, because she's a huge believer in that. So, I mean, it's a really interesting protocol that you put together. Everything that you put together makes perfect sense. It's really amazing that he responded so dramatically with and without it. And so
Both times.
both times. And so basically, we kind of skipped over when you gave that dewormer and he crashed. How fast after the dewormer did he crash?
Within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours. And
yeah, he basically stopped eating. And that was the beginning of that crash.
right. And so then basically he developed autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So,
Yes, he did.
because if his bone marrow just stopped working again, it would take, like he did before, it would take a long period of time before all those red blood cells to die off. But if you give something and 24 to 48 hours later, your red blood cells are way down here, that's the body said, nope, going after it.
And so one of the things that came from that is obviously we had to put him on steroids. We had to stop his immune system from attacking his red blood cells. So he was
really scary when you've got a virus and then you add steroids, and it's like, okay, going to town.
So my normal vet was not available. She was on vacation, because that's always what happens, right? Your animal always gets sick on the weekend when the offices are closed, or your vet is always away. So I went to another veterinary clinic that was local, and I went in there saying, I need steroids. And they told me, no, you have a leukemia cat. We're not giving steroids. And I said, listen, I need you to test his blood. I need you to test for agglutination, which is, for your viewers, like the clumping that they can identify if it's immune mediated hemolytic anemia. And sure as anything, he came back, yes. So we put him on a very low dose of 5 milligrams. And within a week, it went from, it was at an 8, it went up to a 20. So that was a way of stopping that. Now, I will tell you, when we went back in that week, and I want to say this as a message to your followers, the importance of always getting copies of blood when you go to your veterinarian's office is really, I can't express enough how important it is. They drew his blood, they came back, I brought him home, and now I have a copy and I'm looking at it and I see his neutrophils are at like a 1.23. I put him in the house. I get back in my vehicle. I run down I drove very fast back to the vet, because at a 1.23, there's the potential for sepsis, right? And so here we are again against a weekend, and they're closing on a Saturday at 12:30, and it's like 12:20. And I'm knocking on the door saying, I need Clavamox. I need something to just get me through the weekend so that we can see what's happening. And if I hadn't had that blood work, and I hadn't had at least the awareness of, even if you don't know how to read blood, you know how to read when things are outside of the ranges, right? And Google is a great thing that you can look it up. I don't know that I'd be here with him alive today, because he was extremely exposed. So
sure.
There's a lot of lessons.
We've got an animal who's very anemic, has a very low white blood cell count, which is what leukemia does. And he's on steroids because we're trying to suppress his immune system so that he'll stop killing off his red blood cells. This is like the perfect recipe for bacteria to jump on board and say, what havoc can we wreak here? So yeah. Kind of a mess.
So that was the maelstrom that that his body was in. And, you know, luckily, again, I had all of the spirulina and the thymic protein A, which, is it okay if I tell people the brand that I'm using? Because I think
Sure.
it would be helpful. I
Sure,
use
because it's hard to find.
Yeah, it's called Pro Boost. It's in little packages. It's anyway, for anyone that has a leukemia cat that wants to try, that would be the one I recommend. With spirulina, I would choose organic always. And then with mushrooms, obviously, a quality company. But I started him on that protocol again, you know, right away. And everything started reversing again. And as I mentioned, we had his blood drawn yesterday. And when you look at his blood, it's like you could hang it on a wall perfect. You would never know this cat was sick.
And how old is he now?
Oh God. How am I a really bad mom? A year and 6 months.
Okay, so a year and a half.
Yeah.
Right.
A year and, well, that would be the nice way of putting it. A year and a half. Yeah. Here I am doing heavy math. He's a year and a half.
Close enough. Close enough. So, so I have a question on here that says, brushing Henry's teeth helped throughout his journey. How?
Yes. Okay. So I've always brushed Henry's teeth because obviously cats have a really hard time with periodontal disease. So I've been brushing his teeth since he had his milk teeth when it wasn't necessary. And that benefited him because I've had to come at him with syringes. I've had to come at him with droppers, and he's already used to me coming at his mouth with a toothbrush. So he has no aversion to it. So there are benefits for things that we do to care for our cats in a grooming matter that totally cross over and can help us, God forbid, if they're sick and need it after the fact.
Well, and that also, by brushing his teeth, you're also keeping a really good check on what his gum color is. So that if his gum color goes south, you're on top of it right away.
Yeah. To the person that just wrote, the blood test that they did the same day, it was a complete blood panel, but they did it in-house. So the veterinary office that I went to didn't have to send it out to like an IDEX. They actually had the machinery in their office. So that was the only way I was able to get it.
Yeah, specialty centers are always going to have in-house lab work. And I mean, frankly, just about every veterinary clinic has some in-house lab work. They don't always have the full setup. So, I mean, they should be able to at least look at what the red blood cell, you know, the hematocrit, that sort of thing. So, and like in our clinic, we sent out almost all of our lab work. But we had in-house machines. If I needed an answer immediately, I could do it. If it's something where I had 24, because we always got them back within 24 hours. So if I had 24 hours, I would send it out. I think there's less error at the big labs, and there are pathologists there. So if you get an abnormal CBC, which is the complete blood count, so if they saw that there was that much anemia or the white cell count was really low, then they would actually look at the slide under the microscope, and they would see the clumping or, you know, whatever is going, abnormal cells that might be there. So I like sending things out, but when you're in a crisis situation, you kind of need those answers right away. And so I would say that pretty much every emergency or critical care specialty hospital is going to have the ability to get it right away.
And that came in really useful so after he was on the antibiotics, we did not want him on antibiotics for a long period of time for the reasons you expressed. So we retested him. This poor little boy has had his blood drawn a lot. He is such a good little boy. He's such a sport. But we tested his blood 5 days later, and the neutrophils had already started to come up. So we immediately took him off the antibiotics, again, not to compromise him any more than he needed to be. So
yeah, absolutely. So you have a success story with a dog?
We do. I mean, with a lymphoma dog. So I work a lot with cancer dogs. I'm usually like the last ditch effort.
Aren't we all?
As a holistic vet, right. But I'm like the last ditch effort. Like I'm really the last ditch effort because I don't have that DVM after my name. And we had a dog, stage 4 lymphoma, given 2 months. They wanted to try the CHOP method, you know, the CHOP protocol. But the oncologist basically said, the dog is not going to make it through the end of this protocol. So the pet parent came into my store and asked, you know, what can we do? And I said, well, first off, we got to get your dog on a keto diet. That's the first thing we have to do. And because with chop. I don't feel comfortable letting it be raw, so we'll parboil it, and we can parboil it in mistletoe tea. Add that as a layer of kind of scrambling those cancer channels. We added some turmeric and the bioactivator with some piperine. We added calendula as a really good lymphatic herb. We added these same mushrooms, the cordyceps, the reishi, the maitake. We got this dog on the thymus protein A, the thymic protein A, and also the spirulina. And the dog just went into remission. It was just diagnosed as being in remission last week. So yeah, like just amazing stuff. Now, can we say it's all of the supplementation? No, I think it's a combination of everything, right? And that's that holistic approach. Is you can't just look at one thing to solve a symptom. We kind of just want to deal with the body in its totality and work with it however we can.
You cannot out supplement a bad diet. So you can't take your pet who has cancer, who's on a highly processed, dry kibble food, and then add a bunch of herbs and supplements and expect them to get better. It requires the entire foundational support for the body. So it includes having the diet, having the plant medicine, the whole plant medicine.
Right.
And then in this case, we're adding in glandulars, which I'm a huge fan of glandulars. So it all it plays together. And, these things don't, like that cancer, it didn't happen yesterday. It took a long time for that cancer to happen. And then a lot of things were done and didn't work. And sometimes we get really lucky. And when we do add the right protocols in, they'll turn around. So,
and I think to that point, that's one of the reasons I feel Henry probably responded the way he did, because we've spoken about this before. Henry's on a raw diet. He's not on kibble. Again, I don't know if he was eating kibble or even, highly processed canned food, that he would have the vitality to be able to do what his body has done, that the supplements are, again, just supplementing his body. Right. And so when he, as I had mentioned, when he was really sick, I was parboiling his food just to lightly cook it, especially when his neutrophils were super low. I would not chance that. But the second that I got the blood work showing he was fine, I'm like, we're going back to raw. Like, we're not, like, that's all we're doing. So diet is the foundation for everything.
Yep. Now, we were talking before we came on air about what Henry's favorite food is.
So Henry loves venison, and I actually was asking Dr. Judy why. He hates all things birds. And I wanted to know from a TCM perspective, why the venison? And I'm enamored with your response.
So if we think about poor little Henry with his leukemia and his bone marrow not working so well, and he's had all these bouts of anemia kind of off and on, he's not going to go for a pale meat. He's going to want a red meat because we're trying to build red blood cells. So he's going to want something that's high in iron. But when you're anemic, you're cold. A lot of people, when they're anemic, they're just always cold. You just don't have enough circulation, literally, to get out to the ends of your body. So he's looking for venison, which is very warming. But it's also drying. So it helps dry up any dampness that we've got going on in the body. But he's warming himself from the inside. And so we were laughing at our cats, because my cats, for a lot of my cats, pork is their favorite. They're not beef fans, but pork is a big favorite, and her cat is venison. And we're like, well, in the wild, is little Henry going to go take down a deer? I don't think so. And would my cats go take down a pig? Well, I've got 11 cats. So if they all ganged up together, potentially, but if they found a small enough pig. So, we like to say, well, look at what would their ancestral diet be? Well, for cats, it would be fish and things with feathers. And maybe rabbits, but our cats are looking for something different, but they're just trying to, and then she did say that his favorite treat is pork liver.
Yes, pork nibs. He loves the freeze-dried pork nibs. It's a food. It's the only thing that's kind of like candy. Otherwise, he gets his freeze-dried shrimp. He gets his fish. He'll eat it that way, but
so shrimp is also very warming. But the pork is a good yin tonic. So he's covering his bases a little bit, but overall, even though he's a young kitten, I would say he's cold. And we see a lot more cold cats than dogs. Because think about what cats do. They follow the sunbeam around the house all day. Like I watch my cats and it's like, okay, we're at the front door. Now we're in this window. Now we're in this window. Now we're on this chair. And they're just following the sunbeams around the house all day. So a lot of cats tend to be more cold and they do really like that warmth. So he's just self-medicating, just like he likes his spirulina. So
Yes, he is.
okay. Well, thanks, Johnna. This is very enlightening. And where can people reach you if they want more information about your protocol or a consultation with you? Because we get requests for consultations all the time.
Yes, we do. Well, they can find, I'm, like you mentioned, I'm the chief nutrition officer at bowwowlabs.com. That might be the easiest place, but you can also get me through Instagram at my name, Johnna Devereaux, CPN. And you can DM me there. I just recently started that account. So I've been trying to not do that, but I guess I had to come into the current century.
It is really hard. It is really hard. And then you find out, you don't look at it for a few days and you go, oh, crap, there's a lot of messages in here. I could spend all day trying to answer all this. It's very difficult. So anyway.
But thank you for having me.
Well,
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your input. And this is awesome. And keep us posted on Henry because we used to say in practice, when I was in practice, so it's been a couple years, but cats with leukemia, the average lifespan is 2 to 3 years. And if Henry could, especially, cats, we do know there are some cats that carry the virus but don't become ill. Yours has become ill at least twice. So it's the real deal. It's not like he's just a carrier that's going to test positive. He's the real deal. So I'll be very interested. Hopefully he never needs any more medications that are going to make his immune system turn into crap.
I can assure you he's never going to get any unless it's a dire need. I can assure you of that. Mom learned that lesson.
Yeah. And you never, like I said, parental is considered to be so safe. It's added into a lot of heartworm preventatives for dogs. It's given routinely to puppies and kittens for roundworms. A lot of breeders, pet stores, whoever will, millers, they'll start giving it at 2 weeks of age and give it every week or every other week and until they hit 16 weeks of age, which is just the wrong way to do it. You only want to treat if you have a positive reason to do that. So you've got a positive stool sample, and if you can find natural ways around it, particularly if you have an animal who's got an immune issue, you might want to find another way around.
Well, we ended up, just to follow that up, and then I know we're going to go, but I did find the homeopathic remedies for getting rid of the worms because he was never going to get a second dose. And his fecal sample is parasite free. So it's another just fact that it does work. It might take a little bit longer, right?
Right. And that is the issue, particularly when treating cats. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to dose this 3 times a day for 14 days. Liquids I find are much easier. Some cats I can pill really well. Other cats are going to take off my fingers. So
yeah. I put it in I potentized it through the water.
There you go.
Yeah. I wasn't going to try to pill him. I knew I was pressing my luck.
Exactly. Somebody's asking about spaying and neutering kittens. We do have a blog on drjudymorgan.com about sterilization options for female dogs, male dogs, and cats. So you might want to check that out. Johnna, as always, thank you very much. You are a ray of sunshine and hope for our animals.
Thank you.